So we're in the month of Elul, obviously getting ready for Rosh Hashanah. The main mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah is the mitzvah of shofar. And the truth is, in order to get prepared, we already have been blowing shofar the entire month of Elul. So the real question is, what exactly is the inyan of the shofar? We know that the shofar is obviously meant in order to get us ready for the tshuva. It's smarter you to do tshuva. What exactly is the real nekudas hapnimius of the shofar itself? So let me share with you an idea I saw once from Rav Zucker. Rav Zucker Shlita is a Rav in Eretz Yisrael. You know, there's a Torah from Rav Tzaddik. Rav Tzaddik says that if you want to understand the concept, find the first time it's referenced in Tanakh. If you want to understand any inyan, take that inyan, and the first time it's mentioned in Tanakh is its mahus, is its panemius. So when's the first time the shofar was mentioned? So you'd think regarding the mitzvah of shofar Rosh Hashanah. Rav Zucker has a fantastic yesod, and he says he believes that the first time it's mentioned is actually not related to a horn, but rather it's related to the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu, Shifra. Shifra was one of the midwives, Shifra and Pua. The mother is Yocheved. Medrash says it's Yocheved, and she was a midwife that helped the Jewish people be born in Mitzrayim. Now, so the Shifra, the letters Shifra, Shin Pei Reish, is the Shorish of Shifra, is also shofar. So what's the inyan of Shifra? If you want to understand the inyan of Elul, which is the inyan of a shofar, you have to understand the inyan of Shifra. So what's the inyan of Shifra? This is a Balaturim. Why was she called Shifra? So the Balaturim says like this. The word Shifra is from a Lashon Shipoipris, which means a straw. Kikach derech hamiyaldes, because he says this is the way of the midwife. Shepamim, that there are times, Shavlad noilad meis, where Nebuch, God forbid, the baby could be born without a sign of life. V'lekeches hamiyaldes shifufras shilkana, so the miyaledes, this Shifra, had a straw with her, a CPR machine. Umasima b'tech mayev shalavlad, she would put it into the lungs of the baby, umenafechas by, and she would blow into the lungs of the baby, Mashiach ruach lavlad, and she would give life to something that was lifeless. She was called Shifra because she carried this straw with her, and she would use this in order to give life to those babies that were born without a sign of life. V'zeh Shifra lashon shipaypris. The inyan of the shofar, says Rav Zucker, is that it's connected to this inyan of the shipaypris, which is this CPR machine giving life to something that's missing life, and that's the inyan of the shofar. The inyan of the shofar that's blown on Rosh Hashanah, and it already starts during the month of Elul, is not just the Baal Tekeah blowing, but it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu blowing life into all of Klal Yisrael. That means that if this past year there are parts of you that feel kind of dead, the avodah of the shofar is to bring life to that. That's why, by the way, we always find the shofar is always found historically in Tanakh in times where people lost their lives and they were being revived. Right? We know that there was a shofar by the Matan Torah. We also know the Medrash says that by Matan Torah, Klal Yisrael's neshamas parcha nishmasam, and therefore Hashem had to blow a shofar in order to revive them again, to blow that shipoipris into that life into Klal Yisrael, to give them life again. We also know that the Zohar says that Yitzchak Avinu lost his neshama, parcha nishmasa, his neshama left him by the Shas Hakeda, by the Akedas Yitzchak. And that's why also by the Akedah there's the ram's horn. Again, to blow life into something that's missing those signs of chiyas, something that's dead. That's the whole inyan of tshuva. What's the inyan of tshuva? We all know that most of life, we're dealing with finite things that are really meaningless. Everything finite eventually comes to an end. So at the end of the day, see, if you ask yourself, when am I actually doing something? When am I alive? When am I actually full of life? If everything I do is just a fleeting moment that's going to end at some point, when am I fully alive? So Lubavitcher Rebbe in a Sikha on Parashas Vayechi says, the only time that a Jew is truly alive are those moments where you're mekasher yourself to Kel Melech Chai V'Kayim, to the living God. Those moments where you daven, those moments where you learn, those moments where you connect yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's the ultimate, the only source, the source of life, then those moments a Jew is truly tasting Chaim, truly tasting what it means to be alive. Every time a person does an Aveira and disconnects themselves from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, those moments are dead. Those moments are empty. Those moments are lifeless. The avodah of tshuva, what the shofar is doing by reminding us to do tshuva, when a Jew does tshuva, then all of a sudden, those moments you look back on, that we're dead and we're lifeless, what does the Rambam say? Nasa kischuyos. Those averis become mitzvahs. Those averis become full of life again. This month is very daunting for a lot of people. Coming up to Rosh Hashanah, it creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, but it's not a scary time. It's not a terrible time. Adarab, it's a time you could feel alive again. The whole inyan of tshuva is to give life to every part of your being, every part of Klal Yisrael to be alive again. Who's the symbol of tshuva? The symbol of tshuva is David HaMelech. The Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, David Heikim Olam Shel Tshuva. David was the one who showed the power of tshuva. We all know David wasn't supposed to be alive at all, right? The famous medrash that Adam Rishon said, I want to see this little baby David. And Hashem showed him that he was supposed to be a stillborn. So Adam Rishon had to donate 70 years of his life. David HaMelech's whole life was supposed to be lifeless. David HaMelech's a walking CPR machine. And ultimately that's the role of Mashiach. The role of Mashiach is to give life to the world again. How many Yidden are missing part of themselves, that there's so many parts of themselves that are just dead? How many parts of your day do you feel like are just meaningless and empty? The avodah of Mashiach, the avodah of this month Bechlal, is to taste that shofar, that shipopris of Shifra, of blowing life into something that's lifeless. Where all of a sudden your entire day could be Malichias Mamish. And therefore it's not a scary time, it's not an anxiety-ridding time. Adarab, it's a very great opportunity. You could feel alive again. That's what we all want. Everyone just wants to feel something. And that's the avodah of this month. The shofars, Lashon Shipopris, is to give life to those little babies, that members of Klal Yisrael as a whole, that feels like it's missing that sign of life, that vitality. All of a sudden, the David HaMelech, David Malka Mashiach comes and blows life into the lifeless. That's the avodah of the shofar. When we hear the shofar every day, we should remind ourselves of this. And ultimately, we daven that the shofar of Rosh Hashanah should not just be a shofar to wake us up, Uri Shem Yishanaschem, but it be Kabe Shofar Gadol Cherisein, which would be the ultimate call of the shofar to give life to all of Klal Yisrael. That every aspect of your day, every aspect of the Jewish people should be Malichias Mamish, no more Misa in any form. And that's chus, we should all be fully alive in every aspect of reality. And we should have a ksiva chasima tova.